8 kilometers beneath the ocean surface, in a place where the pressure would crush a human skull in milliseconds. Something is moving. It glides through absolute darkness with a grace that shouldn't be possible. No eyes, no visible propulsion, just movement, fluid and deliberate, like a shadow sliding across an invisible wall. When the deep-sea submersible first captured it on camera in late 2023, the footage was classified for 3 months. Not because of national security, but because the scientists who saw it couldn't agree on what they were looking at. Some called it a new species. Others weren't sure it was alive at all. One marine biologist from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute simply wrote in her notes, "Movement pattern inconsistent with known biology." The creature exists in the Hadal Zone, the deepest trenches on Earth, where the pressure exceeds 100 atmospheres. That's the equivalent of 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of your chest. At this depth, water itself behaves differently. It becomes denser, almost viscous. Light hasn't reached these waters in millions of years. The temperature hovers just above freezing. And yet, life persists. But this thing, whatever it is, doesn't just persist. It thrives. It moves with a fluidity that marine biologists describe as unnerving. Because in the Hadal Zone, energy is scarce. Every movement should be calculated, conservative, survival-oriented. But this creature moves like it owns the abyss, like it's playing. The Japanese research vessel Kai-Mei first detected the anomaly during a routine bathymetric survey of the Mariana Trench in October 2023. What they found at 8,178 meters wasn't just unexpected. It was impossible according to everything we thought we knew about deep-sea life. But the truth is far stranger. Because this creature might not be adapting to the deep sea. It might be adapted for something we haven't discovered yet. To understand what scientists are truly afraid of, we must go back to where it all began. The deep ocean has always been humanity's final frontier. We've mapped more of the moon's surface than our own seafloor. Less than 20% of Earth's oceans have been explored. The Hadal Zone, specifically, trenches deeper than 6,000 meters, represents less than 2% of the ocean floor. But it's here, in these crushing depths, that life reveals its most alien forms. The term Hadal comes from Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. It's fitting. These trenches are Earth's closest approximation to an alien planet. The Mariana Trench, the deepest known point on Earth, plunges to 10,994 meters at Challenger Deep. To put that in perspective, if you dropped Mount Everest into the trench, its peak would still be underwater by more than 2 kilometers. For most of human history, scientists believed nothing could survive past 550 meters. The pressure, the cold, the absolute absence of light. It seemed like a boundary life couldn't cross. But in 1960, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended to Challenger Deep in the bathyscaphe Trieste. At the bottom, they saw something moving. A flat fish. Proof that life had conquered even this. Since then, dozens of expeditions have revealed an entire ecosystem in the abyss. Snailfish with translucent skin and anti-freeze proteins in their blood. Amphipods the size of dinner plates, scavenging on whale carcasses that drift down from above. Xenophyophores, single-celled organisms that grow as large as grapefruits. Each discovery pushed the boundaries of what we thought life could endure. The pressure adaptations alone are remarkable. Deep-sea creatures have no air pockets in their bodies, nothing that can be compressed. Their cells contain organic molecules that counteract the crushing force of the water. Some species have proteins that are more flexible at high pressure than they are at the surface. They've essentially re-engineered the chemistry of life itself. But even among these extremophiles, the 2023 discovery stands apart. Because this creature isn't just surviving the Hadal zone, it's demonstrating behaviors that require energy expenditures we can't explain. It's moving in ways that defy our understanding of hydrodynamics at extreme depth. And most troubling of all, it appears to be aware of the cameras watching it. The first chapter of this mystery begins with technology, not biology. The Kai Mei's expedition was using a new generation of lander systems, autonomous platforms that sink to the sea floor and record for days at a time. These landers are equipped with 4K cameras, bioluminescent-sensitive sensors, and chemical samplers. They're designed to sit quietly on the bottom, attracting marine life with bait while recording everything that approaches. On October 17, 2023, Lander Unit 7 touched down at 8,178 meters in the western sector of the Mariana Trench. For the first 6 hours, the footage was predictable. Small amphipods investigated the bait. A snailfish passed through the frame twice. Standard Hadal zone activity. Then, at hour 7, the creature appeared. At first, it registered only as a distortion in the water. The camera's autofocus struggled, hunting for something to lock onto. Then it materialized, not swimming into frame, but seeming to emerge from the darkness itself. The creature's body, if you could call it that, measured approximately 3 meters in length. But its form was difficult to parse. It had a flattened, elongated shape, almost ribbon-like, but with a thickness that suggested volume. Its surface was jet black, absorbing what little light the lander provided. No scales, no obvious skin texture, just a matte darkness that seemed to drink in photons. What caught the researchers' attention immediately was the movement. The creature didn't swim, it undulated. But the undulation didn't follow any pattern they recognized. Most fish and marine animals propel themselves through wave-like motions that travel from head to tail, or vice versa. This thing generated waves that seemed to originate from multiple points simultaneously. Its body would ripple in 3 or 4 places at once, creating interference patterns that pushed it forward with uncanny efficiency. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, the chief marine biologist on the expedition, later described it as watching a flag in the wind, except the wind is coming from inside the flag. The creature circled the lander 3 times. During these passes, it demonstrated extraordinary spatial awareness. It never touched the lander, never bumped into the bait arm, never showed any sign of disorientation despite the complete absence of eyes or any visible sensory organs. In fact, its maneuvers were so precise that several team members initially wondered if they were watching CGI. But the footage was verified through multiple redundant systems. On its 4th pass, the creature did something that sent a ripple of unease through the research team. It stopped, directly in front of the camera, and remained motionless for 47 seconds. In the deep ocean, stillness is a luxury. Maintaining position requires constant adjustment against subtle currents. Yet this creature hung in the water column without any visible effort, without a single corrective movement. Just absolute, perfect stillness. Then it did something else. It began to change. The surface of its body started to shimmer, developing what appeared to be ridges or pleats that ran perpendicular to its length. These structures emerged and receded in waves, creating a pattern that one researcher described as breathing geometry. The purpose of this behavior remains unknown. After 2 minutes, the creature departed. It didn't swim away. It simply faded back into the darkness the way it had arrived, leaving behind more questions than answers. The second chapter focuses on what happened next and why the footage was classified. When the Kai-Mei retrieved Lander Unit 7 5 days later, the science team immediately noticed something unusual. The bait was untouched. In Hadal zone deployments, bait is typically consumed within hours by scavenging amphipods. But in this case, the bait cage remained full. Even stranger, the chemical sensors detected an anomaly in the water surrounding the lander. Oxygen levels had dropped by 14%. At first, the team thought this was a sensor malfunction. But 3 other landers deployed in the same region showed similar readings. Something in that area was consuming oxygen at a rate far higher than expected for typical Hadal zone life. The footage from the other landers revealed more of the creatures. 7 confirmed sightings across 3 locations, separated by distances of up to 40 kilometers. Each one displayed the same impossible movement patterns, the same lack of visible sensory organs, the same unsettling stillness when observing the cameras. But one piece of footage stood out. Lander Unit 3, positioned at 8,040 meters, captured 2 of the creatures interacting. They approached each other from opposite directions, stopped approximately 2 meters apart, and began a display unlike anything in the marine biology literature. Their bodies began to pulse with internal light. Not bioluminescence, which is common in deep-sea species, but something else. The light didn't emanate from photophores or specialized organs. It seemed to travel through their entire bodies, flowing from one end to the other in waves that synchronized between both creatures. The pattern lasted for 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Then both creatures departed in different directions. Dr. Catherine Yates, a deep-sea ecologist from Scripps Institution of Oceanography who was brought in to analyze the footage, said what everyone was thinking. This looks like communication, advanced communication. The implications were staggering. If these creatures were communicating through light patterns at depths, where no light naturally exists, it suggested cognitive abilities far beyond what we associate with invertebrates or simple fish. It suggested planning, coordination, perhaps even culture. The Japanese government classified the footage not out of malice, but out of caution. They needed time to verify the findings, to rule out hoaxes or equipment failures, to understand what they were dealing with before going public. During those 3 months, a quiet scramble began. Research institutions from 7 countries requested access to the data. The Chinese sent their submersible Fendouge to the region. The American DSV limiting factor, the only privately owned vessel capable of reaching full ocean depth, diverted from a planned expedition to the Tonga Trench. Everyone wanted to see the shadow creatures. But the deeper researchers looked, the stranger it became. The third chapter brings us to the most disturbing discoveries, the ones that continue to perplex scientists. In January 2024, a joint expedition led by NOAA and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution deployed a specialized ROV equipped with multi-spectrum imaging and environmental DNA sampling. Their goal was to capture detailed footage and, if possible, a tissue sample. What they found changed the nature of the investigation entirely. The ROV located a cluster of 5 creatures at 7,890 meters, slightly shallower than previous sightings. For the first time, researchers got high-resolution footage under controlled lighting conditions. And the details were wrong. The creatures had no mouth, no visible orifice for feeding. Scans of the body surface using infrared and ultraviolet filters revealed no pores, no gills, no anatomical features consistent with respiration or digestion. When the ROV attempted to collect a tissue sample using a suction device, the creature simply moved aside with reaction time that seemed too fast for the depth. At 8,000 meters, water density and pressure should slow everything down. Neural signals travel slower. Muscle contractions are dampened. But this creature moved with the speed of a surface fish. The eDNA sampling yielded results that made no sense. Environmental DNA is genetic material that organisms shed into their surroundings. Every living thing leaves traces: skin cells, mucus, waste. The water samples from areas where the creatures had been observed showed elevated DNA presence, but the sequences didn't match anything in the global genetic databases. Not fish, not invertebrate, not bacterial. The closest matches were fragments with similarities to cnidarians, the family that includes jellyfish, but the match was only 38%. For context, humans share more than 80% of their DNA with dogs. Whatever this creature was, it represented a branch of the evolutionary tree so divergent that it might as well be from another planet. Then came the paper published in Deep Sea Research Part 2 in March 2024. Dr. Yates and her team proposed a hypothesis that sent shockwaves through the marine biology community. Based on the creature's movement efficiency, its lack of feeding structures, and the oxygen depletion in surrounding waters, they suggested the creature might not be a heterotroph. It might not eat at all. Instead, it might be surviving through chemosynthesis, directly converting chemical energy from hydrothermal vent compounds into cellular energy. But the nearest known vent systems were over 150 kilometers away. The paper raised more questions than it answered. How did these creatures disperse across such vast distances? Why had they never been observed before despite decades of Hadal Zone exploration? And most pressingly, what was the purpose of their light communication if they were supposedly simple chemosynthetic organisms? The footage from February 2024 provided a possible answer, and it was the answer no one wanted. This changes everything we thought we understood about intelligence in the deep ocean. The February footage came from an autonomous glider, a torpedo-shaped drone that can operate at depth for months without surfacing. It captured something that had never been filmed before: the creatures moving in formation. 18 individuals arranged in a geometric pattern that resembled a three-dimensional grid. They maintained their positions relative to each other while traveling together for over 2 hours across a span of 7 kilometers. Formation behavior requires spatial awareness, communication, and coordination. It's been observed in dolphins, whales, and some schooling fish. But those animals have brains. They have nervous systems evolved over millions of years to process social information. These creatures had no visible brain structure. The CT scans from specimens of similar deep-sea organisms showed no centralized nervous tissue at all. Yet here they were, moving with precision that would shame a military formation. But the greatest mystery still remains, because in April 2024, something happened that nobody expected. A creature approached a manned submersible. The DSV limiting factor, piloted by Victor Vescovo, with marine biologist Dr. Alan Jameson aboard, was conducting a dive to 8,600 meters when they encountered one of the shadow creatures at 8,400 meters. It approached the front viewport and remained there for 6 minutes. During that time, Dr. Jameson reported that the creature's surface began to display patterns, not the light pulses seen in earlier footage, but actual geometric patterns. Triangles, hexagons, shapes that repeated and transformed in sequences. It was like watching math, Dr. Jameson said in a later interview. Like the creature was showing us formulas written in shadow and light. The submersible's exterior cameras recorded everything. But when the footage was analyzed, something impossible appeared in the data. The patterns the creature displayed matched, within a statistical margin, the structure of the submersible's sonar pings. The creature was reflecting their own signals back at them, not randomly, but organized, processed, interpreted. It was responding to their technology with something that looked suspiciously like a response. Since then, 3 more manned encounters have been recorded. Each time, the creatures have approached the submersibles deliberately. Each time, they've displayed similar pattern behaviors. And each time, the researchers have come away with the same unsettling feeling. They're being studied. The Hadal Zone was supposed to be Earth's last frontier, a place of simple survival and ancient evolutionary relics. But these creatures suggest something else entirely. They suggest that in the deepest, darkest, most hostile environment on our planet, intelligence might have evolved in a form we never imagined. Intelligence without eyes. Without a brain, as we understand it. Without any of the biological prerequisites we thought consciousness required. So what happens next? Multiple research initiatives are now underway. The Hadal Intelligence Project, a collaboration between 7 nations, has been allocated funding to establish a permanent observation network in the Mariana Trench. They're deploying sensor arrays that can track movement patterns, chemical signatures, and communication signals across hundreds of square kilometers. The goal is to map the creatures' behaviors over months and years, to understand their life cycle, their population structure, their ecological role, if they have one. NOAA has proposed a sample collection mission for late 2025, using a specialized ROV designed to non-lethally capture and temporarily contain one of the creatures for detailed study. The ethical debates around this proposal are fierce. How do you justify capturing something that might be intelligent? How do you conduct research without causing harm to a species we barely understand? Meanwhile, the theoretical biologists are having their own crisis. These creatures are forcing a complete reevaluation of what we consider necessary for complex behavior. For decades, neuroscience has operated under the assumption that intelligence requires neurons, synapses, centralized processing. But distributed intelligence, cognition spread throughout a body rather than concentrated in a brain, has been demonstrated in octopuses, slime molds, and plant networks. Perhaps these shadow creatures represent the extreme end of that spectrum. An intelligence so distributed, so diffuse, that we can't even recognize the hardware it runs on. Then there are the darker questions, the ones whispered in conference halls but rarely published. If these creatures are intelligent, and if they've evolved in complete isolation from surface life for millions of years, what is their understanding of the universe? What concepts have they developed? What do they think when they encounter our machines? Are they curious, afraid, indifferent? And perhaps most troubling, if intelligence this alien can evolve in Earth's oceans, what might exist in the subsurface oceans of Europa or Enceladus? The shadow creatures have become more than a biological curiosity. They've become a mirror, reflecting back our assumptions about consciousness, intelligence, and what it means to think. Some researchers believe we'll have answers within a decade. Others think we're asking the wrong questions entirely. Because in the end, perhaps the most profound discovery isn't what these creatures are. It's what they reveal about the limits of our understanding. For all our technology, all our scientific progress, we've barely scratched the surface of our own planet. The deep ocean covers more than half of Earth's surface, yet it remains more mysterious than the far side of the moon. We build telescopes to peer into the distant cosmos, while trillion-liter ecosystems thrive beneath us, unseen and unknown. The shadow creatures are a reminder that alien life might not require interstellar travel to find. It might be right here, 8 kilometers down, moving through darkness with a grace we can't explain and purposes we can't fathom. They're a reminder that intelligence isn't a ladder with humans at the top. It's a landscape, vast and varied, with peaks and valleys we haven't begun to map. And they're a reminder that the universe, whether we're looking up at the stars or down into the abyss, always has another secret waiting. The creatures are still down there, still moving, still watching, still communicating in their language of light and shadow. And somewhere in the Hadal zone, in the crushing pressure and absolute darkness, they're conducting their own lives according to rules we're only beginning to glimpse. The scientists aren't terrified because these creatures are dangerous. They're terrified because these creatures are impossible. And yet, they exist. Which means everything we thought we knew about life, about intelligence, about the limits of biology on this planet, everything might need to be rewritten. The deep ocean is still speaking. We're only just learning to listen.